And we are live. Hello, everybody. We're live once again.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Scott. We're just gonna. What do you think of this new little background I whipped up? You okay with it?
Oh, it's fun.
A little fun? A little okay?
It's a little like a gay ocean.
Yeah, a little gay oceany. Mm-hmm.
What are you eating or drinking?
I'm eating coffee right now.
Did you know that I almost didn't make it to our podcast?
I didn't know that. Why did you almost not make it to our podcast?
I'm in Colorado skiing right now.
Oh, you almost died?
Turns out skiing is really dangerous. Did you know that?
I did. I did. Joseph was just skiing with his friends, and one of his friends got like seriously hurt.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'll just do one last run. Like, I have an hour until the podcast. Totally cool. And then I took a wrong turn, and I ended up in a glade.
No, you okay? You made it down, clearly.
I did. I have this. I'm quite a good skier, but then trees just freak me out. I can't do trees. Like, that's the one way you're gonna die. There's a couple ways to die, but like, what are you doing?
I'm brushing my hair.
Okay, cool.
I forgot to do it.
I almost hit a tree, and then I like lost total confidence, and then it's called the ski patrol. They're like, "We'll be there in 20 minutes," and I was like, "Wow, I am not going to make the podcast." But the guy was really nice and shepherded me through the trees, and I didn't get hurt, and I'm fine.
That's good.
And I'm here.
Congratulations. And you're here, and it's very exciting. I'm going to
talk about. What are we talking about today?
Gay movie?
Gay movie?
It was podcast. Movie? We have not started the podcast yet, but we are to talk about.
Oh, we haven't? My bad.
It's okay. We can start the podcast. Sorry, I should have told you to save your exciting skiing story.
Oh, it's okay.
No, let me take a little screenshot of us. Give us a smile. Give us a good smile. Perfect. Yeah, that's beautiful.
What is this for?
Just to like throw onto Instagram or whatever. Get people to come watch with us.
Cool.
Yeah.
I forgot that this is the part that we're not actually recording, because we are recording, but we're not doing
it. Right. We're live. People can hear us. People can talk to us if they want. And if you're in the chat, say hi.
Yeah.
We'd love to know. We'd love to know, because I don't want to just talk to Scott by myself.
Okay.
Just kidding. Scott, of course I'd talk to you by myself.
What do we do when we're on the phone?
We talk by ourselves.
Yeah.
All the time. I'm just joking. Okay. You wanna do it?
I wanna, yeah.
Do you wanna get right into that podcast? Okay.
Let me take like one more bite of my Cliff Bar and then we can do it.
Ooh. Okay, I lost you.
What? You did?
No, you're back. Okay. I got a little... Let me take one more bite of my... But it's okay. You're back.
Cliff Bar.
Yeah, you're eating your Cliff Bar. Not sponsored! I made us a new theme song. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Kidding. I downloaded that for a completely different purpose.
Can Gatorade sponsor us?
Gatorade?
Do you know how many orange Gatorades I drink?
Anyone
it's probably unhealthy.
Scott, you're the business guy. Don't ask me questions like that. Whoa, we lost Scott Wise. Okay. Well, thank you, Azzy. Okay, Scott, welcome back. Why did you leave me?
Yep, I didn't touch anything, I swear. What are you playing?
Okay. Just a silly thing I made.
Oh, is that our theme song?
For today it is. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready to record?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Okay, don't leave me again like that. I was so
I'm
scared.
in I'm in Colorado. I don't know what the Wi-Fi situation is. This is not home for me. So
Okay. Cool. Well, we're gonna dive into the podcast in 3, 2, 1. Holy guacamole, we're casting. We're podcasting. And if you're listening to us, that means that you've made a wonderful decision today because you are sitting here with me. My name is Sarah Kaplan, and I'm sitting here with my best friend, Scott Wise.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Scott.
How are you
And
doing?
this is Nerd Squad Reviews. This
We're
is Nerd
here.
Squad Reviews. We're here. Scott and I, we're nerds. Together, we make a squad of nerds. That is the actual collective noun. An unkindness of ravens, a murder of
Pod
crows,
of whales,
pod of whales, squad of nerds.
a flamboyance of flamingos.
And if you are listening, I mean, you're welcome to join the squad. You like how I pronounce it?
Squad.
Squad. That was a squad advertisement for our community. We do have a Discord, I guess. Okay, Scott, what do we do on this podcast?
We review whatever we want, and then we
Yeah.
score it on a scale of 0 to 37.
Yeah, I mean, look, technically, we do reserve the right to review whatever we want. There could come a time when we put it out an episode, and it's like Nerd Squad Reviews, Batarga. And, and you get to hear our thoughts on cured fish roe, cured cod roe. But that's not what we're reviewing today.
No, today we're doing a movie because that's all we've done so far.
A normal thing to review.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be down to review Batarga with you, though.
I just bought some Batarga.
We maybe would have to like be co-located together to do that.
Yeah, I gave Willa Batarga for Valentine's Day.
How lovely.
Yeah, she made a delicious Batarga pasta that I ate with her and her ex-boyfriend, now friend who is not a boy. And today we're reviewing But I'm a Cheerleader.
What a segue.
Yes. Speaking of segues, today we already introduced it. And this movie actually is one that's divided conveniently into sections, I guess, if we choose to use them.
Sort of, yeah. You know I like to have a framework, some sort of device in which we can break up the hour and a half in which we're going to speak.
Of course. And speaking of devices by which we can break up the hour and a half in which we're going to speak, before we get like into the nitty-gritty of this movie, there's a really niche indie movie that no one's ever heard of, especially gay people. How are you doing, Scott? Like, what's going on, man?
I'm okay. I'm in Colorado. I just almost died skiing, but I made it here anyway. So we're all good.
That's great. And yeah. I spent the weekend LARPing and almost died. I mean, pretend almost died, but I almost died. I was poisoned.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the LARP situation?
Yes, the LARP situation. My character is a 91-year-old craftswoman named Harushka. And Harushka is, she speaks with sort of a vague and ever-evolving kind of Eastern European accent. And she's very old. And she's very weak and frail. But I want to be clear that she is not weak because she is an old woman. There are lots of strong old women. Harushka is weak because she chooses to be weak.
Interesting choice.
Yes. Well, she doesn't care about the fighting. And so Harushka lived alone in the woods for most of her life. And I lost Scott Wise. Scott doesn't want to hear me talking about Harushka whatsoever. But that's okay. I will talk to my friends in the chat. Harushka is a craftswoman. She gathers. She's excellent miner. She's grandmaster artificer. But she's so weak and frail. And yeah. I mean, that's it. Scott, you left me. And then you came back.
I'm so sorry. This is going to happen again and again. I don't know what to do about it.
It's okay. We're going to edit these out of the actual pod.
Okay, great.
and I'm gonna have to do my best not to perpetually comment on them. I also am going to have to do my best to leave this accent, which is very okay. And back to normal voice. Okay, there we go. Not that hard.
I like hearing Harushka do this podcast.
Harushka, yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with her. I also play a character named the Unrelenting Dawn, who I she's a more complicated LARP character. Look, in LARP you make choices, and then
In
you're
LARP, like in life, you make choices.
and then you're stuck with choices you make. But like in life, the choices you make in LARP are not as static as they may seem. So you can always change if you find yourself being like, I don't like the habits I've developed. I don't like the personality I've crafted for myself. I mean, you can just change it. Worst case scenario, other people will be like, "Hey, you're being different than normal." And you can be like, "I'm trying to better myself, okay?"
Would you say that LARP is a microcosm of life?
Um, I would say that, uh, I guess I would say that LARP is a bunch of pretend lives, but it is also part of my life.
Whoa.
Whoa. All things are microcosms of life, Scott. There
It's like set theory.
Right. There's nothing that can't be turned into a metaphor for life.
Like the movie we're about to talk about.
Yes, my favorite metaphor for life. But I'm a cheerleader.
But I'm a cheerleader.
Yeah. Last time we were talking about the Academy Award nominated film, The Holdovers. Last week for Scott and me, I don't think I'm going to release the podcast episodes in that order. So if you're confused, that's why. But that was a very different movie from this one.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah. Scott, you've seen this movie before, right?
I had. I used to watch whatever queer content I could find on HBO or Showtime. You know how like post 9 or 10 p.m. things would get a little
like in high school?
Like in middle school, I would like sneak away to the TV and find, some kind of sexy content or whatever. Queer as Folk would be on, and some sort of like HBO softcore porn or whatever. But I'm a Cheerleader was one of those kind of like after hours HBO movies. This is from 1999, so it's been around for a while. It's like a camp cult classic of queer cinema. And so in one of those sort of like, I'm not supposed to be watching this states, I watched it. Had a lot of jokes that I did not understand. So rewatching it was, as a out gay person, was very beneficial, I think. It was like I was watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
And I know this is the first time you've seen it, even though it is a staple of especially lesbian cinema. So what was your initial thoughts upon watching this cult classic?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even heard of it until last year. And my initial thoughts are that I want to introduce a new segment to the podcast, Scott.
Tell me.
I want to introduce the quick, no spoilers, lightning review.
Love it.
Because I was thinking about this the other day, and analyzing art like chunk-wise linearly, that's just not how my brain works. So instead, I thought for all our people out there who are worried about spoilers and who are listening to this episode and are wondering, well, I haven't seen But I'm a Cheerleader, but I might want to. Should I watch it before I listen to this episode? And here's what I'll say. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Go watch the movie. It's fun. Will spoilers ruin my experience of the movie? No, I don't think so. It's it's a movie that's been out since 1999. It's not revolutionary plot-wise. It's not telling any crazy unpredictable story. So I think you can safely listen to this episode and then still go watch the movie and enjoy it. But if you hate spoilers, go watch the movie first and then come back and listen.
I think that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. So, Scott, take us away.
Sarah.
Take...
So, But I'm a Cheerleader is a riff on conversion therapy. It's gay and lesbian high schoolers who are shipped off to a camp by their parents or their guardian figures to take the gay away. It's not explicitly Christian. It's not pray the gay away necessarily. It's more like gender essentialism. So it's taking the piss out of these conversion therapy places and making it into a farce, and to showcase really just how ridiculous these are.
Yeah, it is formally. I would argue that it is explicitly Christian, even though there's a Jewish kid there. They don't refer to Jesus Christ, but they do refer to God and the higher power and stuff in a way that is extremely Christian. Like, it feels like a Christian youth camp and not like a Jewish youth camp to me.
Totally fair.
As a you myself. But you're right. Like, it's not about what they're worshiping is not Christianity. What they're worshiping is, as you said, very much like the gender roles, the institutions of gender, and the social organizations based on them.
So you have this framework of this male part of the camp of gay high schoolers trying to get ex-gay by an ex-gay man played by RuPaul.
Is that RuPaul?
That's RuPaul.
Oh, all right.
And then you have the female part of it, and the kids, actually, a lot of them turn out to be A-list stars in the year of our Lord 2024. You have Natasha Lyonne playing the lead. You have Clea Duvall, an iconic lesbian actress, playing another one of the girls at the camp. You have Melanie Linsky at the camp. You have Eddie Cibrian playing the kind of the sexy man figure. And then you've probably seen some of these other people's some of these other actors in bit roles as well. So this seems like sort of a launching pad for a lot of these actors that you might recognize today. And I always enjoy seeing kind of the first projects of some of these people who we know and love today.
Yeah. And it was also the director's first feature-length film. And it was directed by a woman. I always like to look up, like, this when you're talking about a queer movie, especially a movie that's like, this is a lesbian movie, I'm always interested as I go into it. Like, was it written and directed by a woman? A lesbian. In this case, it was directed by a lesbian woman, and it was her idea. Like, the basis of the movie was her idea that she asked a gay man to write. So the script was written by a gay man based on the idea of a lesbian director. They obviously were working together to write it.
Right. They clearly were working together in order to get the two sides of the story for the men and the women.
Which was great. Great. And yeah, so we're following our main character, Natasha Lyonne, who would go on to, the first time I saw her was Orange is the New Black, also playing a lesbian, but I don't think the actress is lesbian, actually.
She's not. I was on a flight with her once, and she was there with Fred Armisen. She dated him for a long time.
She dated Fred Armisen?
Yeah. I don't think they're still together, but...
Good.
They were on a flight back from LA when I visited you once.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
She's pretty famous for like her hair and her voice. And
her voice is very recognizable. It was actually really interesting to hear like the younger, less cigarette damaged version of her voice. Because it's still like grainy. I don't know how to describe it.
There's a unique timbre
it's husky.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is actually, it's a really interesting like vocal choice for this character who is kind of playing, she's the ideal Christian girl. Or that's the role she's playing in her head. Not well, because as we first see her, she is a cheerleader, and we like immediately cut to she's interacting with her boyfriend, who's like this hot football player guy. They start making out in his car, and I lost Scott again. Fuck. Scott, come back to me. If you're watching this live, you're going to see Scott repeatedly cut in and out. And I'm going to do my best to like... Scott, are you on the apartment Wi-Fi?
Yeah, should I switch?
Is your phone's Wi-Fi better?
I can try.
Also, if video is too much, you can just be here and we can talk audio.
Let me try stopping the camera and see if that helps.
Okay. Let's see if this
works.
Is
that what you had in mind?
Yeah, that's what I meant. And I'll turn mine off too. We'll just be We'll just be talking things.
If this doesn't work, I'll go on Wi-Fi.
Okay. Oh, you can have an audio avatar? That's kind of cool. Let's fuck it up. What's my audio avatar? You should add an audio avatar too.
How do you do that?
If you like the three
edit
vertical
audio
dots.
avatar.
Yeah. We do pictures of ourselves, or are we gonna do weird shit?
Ooh, I don't even know what I have on my computer.
Let's
Yeah, I'm gonna leave that comment there.
Who we are. Who are we? Sarah's James Cameron moment. I don't know what that means. Azzy, you have to explain that to me. I could be a boar. Like I have access to more photos than you have. So pick a thing and I'll pick something to match, you know? I have a photo of fruit bat soup.
Ooh, this is a fun one.
Oh, avatar, obvi. I can't see it, Scott. Okay. Ooh, that's nice. So it's just like a nice picture of you, huh?
Yeah, I didn't frame it well, but whatever.
That's okay. I'll do a picture of me. Yeah. I can do a picture of me that I just screenshotted from this thing. That's what I'll do. This is good. This is good content we're doing right now.
Yeah, great.
You're welcome to the content. Welcome to This is life. That you think. Listen, if you think the podcasters you listen to not live are any more professional than this, you're probably correct. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Scott, you're just a nice photo of yourself. I'll just be a nice photo of myself. Okay, whatever.
You don't want to see what else I have on my computer, so.
I mean, I really do, but it's okay. I'll just be this photo. Let's use my headshot. Fine.
Ooh, you have a headshot?
My head's gonna be so big.
That's so fun.
I don't like that headshot though. I'm gonna continue doing good content.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you leave that there and we keep going and hope that the thing doesn't kick me out again.
Fine.
You can edit your audio avatar as we go.
I know, but that's gonna distract me. Like I have to pick one and just stick with it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is silly. This is very silly. I'm gonna be a boar.
B-O-R-E or B-O-A-R? Ah, you answered my question. Great.
All right. Get back into it. Where were we? Yes. They go to her boyfriend's car where they immediately start making out. And she's so into it, right, Scott? She's like, she loves it so much, right? Is that the vibe?
You've literally never seen a less a kiss with less chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, and the dude is doing like classic over aggressive high school boy style kissing. He's like
so much tongue,
destroying her mouth. It's like his mouth is so open and prying her mouth so open. And she is spending the time fantasizing about her fellow cheerleaders' tits and skirts and stuff just to like get through the moment. And eventually she goes home.
That's a relatable scene.
Yeah, no, it's relatable. I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it. It was definitely relatable. She goes home. We find out she's a vegetarian. Not a good sign. She goes to school. We find out their parents are plotting shit. I'm just speeding through this stuff because it's unless you have stuff you want to talk about in this section.
No, this is the pre
conversion
therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. She goes to school. She comes back from school. Her boyfriend drops her off. Her boyfriend and friends and parents have staged an intervention along with the people from True Direction with RuPaul, where they're basically telling her like, hey, you're a fucking lesbo and we're sending you off to conversion camp.
Their reasoning was, as you said, she's a vegetarian. She only has pictures of women in her locker, and she sleeps with a pillow in the shape of an orchid by Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yeah, she sleeps with her mouth right next to a very blatantly embroidered vagina, which is hilarious. I took a screenshot of it the first time I saw it.
I want the pillow.
Oh, the pillow's amazing. I was disappointed that they brought it back, actually, because it made me feel so smart when I recognized it initially, and then they brought it back, and I was like, "Well, now I'm not special." Um,
Oh,
but
is
no,
that Georgia O'Keeffe?
Yeah, it's like it's not a movie concerned with subtlety, is what I'm saying. And
No,
I'm a
not at
pretentious
all.
asshole sometimes, is also what I'm saying. Um, so yeah, she has this pillow. She has pictures of Lady Rockers, Melissa Etheridge, I think
Yes.
that who it was.
An
And
iconic lesbian
yeah,
singer-songwriter.
and she's a vegetarian. Like, she doesn't know she's gay, which is very
I thought that was funny.
I thought it was funny. Yeah.
Everyone in her life knows she's gay except for her.
Yeah. Which, Scott, can you relate to that?
Oh. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it, and I don't want to know.
Do you not want to know?
Well, in my experience, what I experienced as coming out was anyone who knew me pre-puberty was like,
That's so sad. He was about to tell us such a good little bit of Scott lore. Hi, Scott.
let me try my phone.
Okay. Well, anyway, while Scott's trying his phone, do y'all want to listen to me play my recorder? No? What the fuck? Fine.
Let's see. Hotspot. What I was saying is anyone who knew me pre-puberty knew I was a flaming homosexual, including your mother.
Oh, yeah. And Joseph said that he always knew you were gay.
And then anyone who knew me post voice change, like a lot of people in college said, I was so surprised when you came out. So I actively was playing a part, and I pulled it off for some people at least.
I think I probably was similar, at least as far as like being queer goes. Like, no one knew I was trans, but when I came out as trans, that was not something that was on people's radar.
I had absolutely no idea.
Yeah, it just like wasn't a thing people were thinking about. And if I'd been the same person now, maybe, but I didn't even know I was trans. So how are those people supposed to know? Like, my mom definitely wasn't surprised when I came out as bisexual, which I think people in high school, like by the time I was similarly like post puberty, I was so depressed and withdrawn and disinterested in romance that people thought I was asexual, but I don't think people thought I was gay. But if you knew me as a kid wandering around my elementary school, wandered around during recess in elementary school listening to the Jekyll and Hyde musical, or practicing musical choreography in the outfield during Little League baseball games, then yeah, I mean, you probably should have known. But again, different time. Like, just wasn't, people weren't thinking about that as much. But okay, everyone knows she's gay, except for her. She goes to this camp. We meet RuPaul. RuPaul works at this camp. He's an ex-gay, a very successful ex-gay. And
can I pause you for a second?
Yeah, please.
And ask you a question that we may end up cutting, but
no, there's no privacy on this podcast.
I know you didn't realize this was RuPaul. RuPaul is a much bigger celebrity today than they were in 1999. I would love to know your thoughts on RuPaul.
You want me to talk about RuPaul?
Would you?
Yeah, but I think let's
can save it.
Come back to RuPaul after the movie. I think it'll be a distracting conversation for now, I think.
Understood.
But I do want to come back to RuPaul. So if you're listening,
stick around.
RuPaul at the end, special bonus section, Nerdsquad reviews RuPaul. Okay, Scott. They're at the camp. They're at True Directions. We meet the woman who runs True Directions. I couldn't tell if we were meant to think that she also was like an ex-gay or not.
What did you think?
There are moments where I thought it was building to that, but it was never made like, this isn't a subtle movie, and if we are meant to think that, it was done much more subtly than anything else was done in the movie. So I
It
don't
was
think
made
it was
clear.
the
It was made
mm,
clear about 2/3 into the movie when they reveal the married gay couple who are kind of like the anti-conversion therapy people
mhm,
that they say, "Yeah, you're not living your truth."
right. Yeah, so she's probably gay. I mean, when she meets our protagonist, Megan? Why am I so bad at this?
Yeah, Megan.
Megan. She meets our protagonist, Megan, and she's trying to convince Megan that step one in True Direction's 5-step program is admitting you're a homosexual. So when she's talking to Megan and trying to convince her that she is in fact a lesbian, she is she's describing women in ways that are like very erotic. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah. She's like, yeah, have you ever focused on them putting lipstick on their full lips in the bathroom mirror or whatever? And I'm like, all right, so I think we're supposed to think she's gay also. Um, and we start meeting the rest of the girls. The whole set, like, to take a pause and talk about the set design for a second. It's so like Tim Burton, and I loved it. No, I mean I thought it was really fun. That's not if it like Tim Burton parentheses positive because it's also possible to be Tim Burton parentheses negative. Um,
I thought that they did a good job of keeping a small budget. Like, it was clearly cheap,
right,
but
right,
it was effective in the set pieces that they chose to put in.
yeah. And by Tim Burton, I mean that like bright, solid pastel colors, this very like heightened aesthetic. It feels like this camp could be in the suburbia of Edward Scissorhands, is what I mean by that.
I agree.
Yeah. So we start to meet the other
So
girls. Oh, continue, Scott.
so this is about where we get the framing device. It's in 5 chunks. There's the pre-getting to the conversion therapy, and then they lay out on the screen step 1 of conversion therapy. Step 1 is admitting you're a homosexual. And they tell us, and this is maybe where we start to get to spoilers,
Hmm.
but they tell us that she's the last one there in this cohort of kids, and she has not committed step 1, but everyone else has. Everyone else at the campus has declared that they're a homosexual, but Megan, our protagonist, has yet to fulfill that step.
Hmm. Well, anyway, what should we talk about when Scott's not here? We can talk about secret things. Do y'all want to hear, I don't know, true stories about Scott? Oh, he's back.
I'm gonna stay off camera. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. Have you tried your phone's Wi-Fi?
We are on phone
Oh,
Wi-Fi,
we're on your phone Wi-Fi.
but you can stay
Okay.
on camera. I
No,
like
it's
watching.
you like okay. I'll stay on. Uh yeah, so we start to meet all the other kids. The first one we meet is the New Zealand girl who is like a weirdly not a major player at all.
She's a
Like
huge star now, by the way.
I believe it. And I was so excited when she appeared because I love like New Zealand and Australian accents, my favorite accents.
Can you do it?
And sometimes
Nar.
R&R. It's
That's my favorite word. Nar.
yeah. I used to be able to do it pretty okay. Pretty okay. No, see I'm not doing it very well right now. Right now. I lived with a Kiwi in college and I could do it much better then. But I can't do it very well right now. I just when I've just spent a weekend at LARP, there's so many accents happening, and it destroys any of my accent abilities.
Except for Harushka.
Except for Harushka, of course. But Harushka does not have any sort of particular accent. It is meandering. Uh, okay, so let's meet our cast. It's a small cast. It's a small crew of kids. Thank you, Evil Yvonne. We have our New Zealand girl. Do you know her name?
Hillary, played by Melanie Linsky.
Hillary, played by Melanie Linsky, and she's kind of like the good girl, I guess. Like she's the one who's bought in, but she's not a bad guy. Like, she's not reporting. She doesn't do anything. She has no plot purpose. She's just sort of there.
She's there with a fun accent.
She's there with a fun accent. She feels vestigial from an earlier draft to me.
That's
and right. then we meet Graham, who's ultimately going to be our love interest, and she's kind of just, I don't know, like a bitch. That's like her character archetype at first.
And she's on the butch type, the butch side, right? How would you describe her?
Yeah, she feels, in like modern terminology, I guess, soft butch. Like, she wears button downs and pants when she gets to choose what to wear, but she's not afraid of being feminine. I think she's still okay wearing makeup and stuff.
She is extremely gay. She's out.
She's super gay. She's out. Mask of center is what you might call her, or soft butch or whatever. Because there is someone who's like full on butch who, spoiler alert, is not gay actually.
I loved that part. That was maybe my favorite part of the whole movie.
Yeah, me too. But she's out. She hates this whole program. She's the rebel, and she's intriguing to Megan. And the other girls are, what are their fucking names, Scott? You need to help me.
I didn't write those down. I just wrote down the ones I recognized.
Okay. And yeah, so our other girls, we have like kind of the goth girl, and we have the super butch one who plays softball.
With like a mohawk and a little bit of facial hair coming in.
A mustache. Yeah. And like, you'd probably describe her as trans mask. Like, she looks like a trans mask person.
I was curious about that.
Modern times.
And in general, this is a 1999 movie. There's not much talk of transness, if at all.
None, yeah. We get the words butch and we get the word sissy, but that's kind of it. And those aren't like trans terms, but that's referencing to what might be considered trans undertones, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's I mean, and like, there are butch people and there are trans mask people, and sometimes two people who might look very similar will identify in different ways.
Would you say that a movie in 1999 like didn't have the vocabulary to deal with this at the time?
Yeah. I think it was, yes, I would say that. And I would also say that like the differentiations between like the categorical lines that have since been sort of drawn between things like butch and trans mask were not nearly as defined or commonly known. And those are just categorical lines. Like, again, it's all social construct. That's just our current terminology. I really love at the start of Transgender History of the United States is a book by Susan Stryker. And at the beginning of the book, she has this long, like, her best attempt at sort of a dictionary of trans terminology, slang, and identity labels that she goes through and does her best to define in the time that she's writing, and then follows it with a long note being like, look, this terminology changes so fast that I'm doing my best to use like the most accurate language right now, but I know that if you're reading this 10 years from now, it's going to feel out of date.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there used to be a much more common identity called like a he, him, lesbian, for example, that you don't see too many people identifying as anymore. You will still have trans mask people who identify as like lesbian. You'll have trans mask people who date women who don't want to be called lesbian because they consider it gender unaffirming. It's all, we're all figuring it out together.
Yeah, and 25 years ago, I don't think I would expect a movie to be able to to comment on stuff that we just didn't have the words for at the time.
Yeah. Like for example, you know the term cis versus trans.
Mm-hmm.
And cis is a word that has like existed in scattered, like very niche, very like deep trans blogger community stuff going back a ways. Like there's some references to it in the 90s and maybe before. It didn't really become any sort of like popularized language used outside of the like very niche specific trans conversation happening online until Julia Serrano's book Whipping Girl used it. And she didn't come up with the term, but she like used it a lot in her book, which ended up becoming a much more wide read book than she expected.
And that's what
And
year?
that's 2007.
Okay, so 8
So
years
like
after this movie.
most trans people would not have been thinking linguistically in the terms trans versus cis until 2007, for example. Yeah, 8 years after this movie came out. So yeah, I don't know. Like it would be interesting to see if the creators of the movie have made any comments on like what their intentions were or what they would do if they remade the film. But
Yeah, and I was thinking about this too, in the sense that this is the first movie that we've seen that's a historical film. Everything else was made, in the last year or so, and so we have the contemporary language to discuss it. But this is a film that we have to decide, does this hold up? And I think a lot of movies, like you said, trans and queer language changes so quickly as we progress. I thought this eerily did a pretty good job of holding up, actually. Kind of unfortunately, the fact that we're still dealing with things like conversion therapy and that.
What do you mean by
LGBT
can you define hold up?
Hold up. I think it still has merit today as a film that I would recommend people to watch. Like, we haven't rated it yet, but I think it's going to be higher than some of our other films. I could be wrong. I just looked up the Metacritic score, and the critical review and the fan review are quite different on this one. The critical review is in like the 30%, and the fan review is in like the 70s, in the 70%. Yeah.
Are the critical reviews being drawn from 1999?
Exactly. From when the movie came out.
So interesting.
And that's what I'm saying in terms of holding up. I'm not sure. I think it was prescient in a lot of ways. And the fact that we're still dealing with a lot of these stereotypes that were used as jokes, but that a lot of people still believe about gay and lesbian people.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it totally holds up. I was only asking for, I wanted to know what your definition was in that way, because like, I guess usually if I would say like the movie doesn't hold up, it would be because it unknowingly expresses something that like now we consider bad, right? Like the way the Dude Wears My Car presents trans people does not hold up. You watch it now and you're like, "Oh, okay.
That's rough.
They were on some transphobic shit."
Or like Ace Ventura.
Or Ace Ventura, very much so. And I guess the question of like the difference is, to me, like that was still transphobic then. It's just that the audience changed around the movie. Right? Like what was acceptable. And there are lots of people who still think obviously that shit's acceptable because people hate us now. But anyways,
I thought a lot of the jokes that were made in this movie, especially when it comes down to gender roles, I think in the hands of a different writer or director could have come across really cringe, especially watching it 25 years later. But we're still dealing with a lot of these, again, I'm going to use the term gender essentialism issues, where, I mean, IVF was just banned in Alabama. Like, men thinking they can control women is still very much at the forefront of our political society.
And, I think the difference is that this was a movie made by gay people who like gay people. Like the movie is not homophobic.
And that was my first question. Is this the correct, maybe that's not even the right word to use, but is this the feminine queer gaze? When we compare it to the movie that we watched a couple weeks ago, Bottoms, your point was that it felt like it was not really a queer or a lesbian gaze, GAZE, for the film, and it felt like this was using a lot of the same jokes, or I don't think they quite use the word faggot, but a joke about the word faggot would have felt.
They do use the word
They
faggot.
do? That it felt so much more, responsible in the hands of these directors and writers.
Yeah. No, I mean, these people like the director and writer of this movie clearly like gay people. Like, this is a movie, the gay people are not the butt of the joke. As
That's a good
opposed to
point.
Bottoms, where they are. Yeah, this movie, even when like there is comedy in the gay boys, for example, being effeminate or not being able to play football or not being able to chop wood, like the
I can't
joke.
chop wood.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
the
kidding.
joke isn't like you're laughing at this boy because he's effeminate. The joke is you're laughing at this system that is trying to force this effeminate boy to play act as this macho wood chopping man. Right?
Exactly.
And it's a huge difference to me. The joke isn't someone, sorry. The comedy, you're not laughing at him for being a sissy. You're laughing at the absurdity of the situation.
Of the idea that you can turn someone straight.
Yeah, or that you should.
It seems
And
like it seems like that's one of the main questions at the beginning of throughout the movie. Is there such thing as an ex-gay?
I think the movie has a clear thesis, which is no.
Right.
I don't even think it's a question for the movie. Like, the second we meet RuPaul's character at Megan's house during the intervention, and he's, says, "I myself am an ex-gay," and like, okay, he's saying this in like a super faggy way. Like, the movie does not think it's possible. This is very much a born this way, like, homosexuality is a static identity. This is deep in the era of like legalization of gay marriage stuff.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, like, this was the dominant public queer politic. Like, you had lots of much more radical gay liberation fronts who were like, "Hey, that's a terrible message to try to use," but you're kind of mainstream gay advocates and lawyers, all the people working to legitimize homosexual love, love is love, born this way shit. This is in line with that line of thought. Like,
Yeah, and it
today,
feels like.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like, today, I think I don't think that's true. I don't think a conversion camp can turn a gay teenager into a straight teenager. But that said, like, people's sexuality definitely can change over time. Things can happen that change people's sexuality. And there's a much wider range of sexualities than is allowed for in this movie. Like, the fact that none of the kids are bisexual is interesting. And on the one hand, you might say, like, well, a bisexual kid is probably able to, like, hide more effectively and not end up at a camp like this. But
I did appreciate the ensemble nature of this movie, that we had a couple protagonists that we were paying attention to, but they gave us a lot of different examples of what it could be like to be a high schooler who comes out. One of the or maybe is forced out because they're too clearly queer.
Yeah.
We talked about step one of the camp being admitting you're a homosexual, which is just saying I'm a homosexual. Then step two is rediscovering your sexual identity. And one of the major questions that they asked during that phase is, what is your root? Do you remember this?
Yeah, of course.
What can you describe what they mean by root?
Yeah, by root, they seem to be getting at some kind of like Freudian psychoanalytical thing. Like, what is the trauma or identifiable event that happened to you that turned you into a homosexual.
And then they play it for laughs because it's such an absurd premise to think that something turned you gay.
Yeah.
What they're really talking about is, when did you first realize you were gay?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. Like, I don't think that's true because when the sissy boy, the super femboy, I don't remember his name, but when he tries to say his root was like, well, after swim practice and all the boys were changing and I got an erection, um, like that wasn't it. Like that wasn't good enough for the camp because they're like, well, people in a locker room changing after swim practice, everyone does that, you know, like that didn't turn the other boys on the swim team gay. So that's not a good enough reason.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. They were looking for something much more psychoanalytic. Megan's
Yeah.
example was when her mom had to make the money for the family because her dad got laid off, and all of a sudden she started wearing pantsuits.
Hmm.
And that seemed to get the correct response from the main camp counselor. Say, yes, that is a root of your homosexuality.
Yeah, exactly. Or um when the butch girl like ends up leaving and she's saying like I'm not even gay. I like boys. And RuPaul's character says like that's ridiculous. Obviously you're gay. I mean, you were molested. And like it's fucked up. But that was what this character's root was. Like that's the cause she'd identified. But I mean that's just a trauma that will definitely fuck with your understanding of sex. But yeah, I'd say the root is like the trauma that caused you to be gay, not just when
Hmm.
you realized you were gay. Because Megan didn't know she was gay, but she identified her root as when her when her mom when her dad like lost his job and her mom was the breadwinner in the house for 7 months. And she's like,
Right.
"Well, maybe that confused my understanding of what gender roles were meant to be." And they're like,
Yeah,
"Yes, that's your root."
and through this step 2, they show a lot of montages of women doing women things like
Hmm.
cleaning, and men doing men things like you said, chopping wood.
And these are but you mean like the kids being forced to do these things.
Yes, right.
Yeah, like the girls are doing makeup, they're scrubbing the floor, they're changing a baby's diaper, and the boys are chopping wood, playing football, and fixing a car. I mean, it is like it's this extraordinarily juvenile understanding of gender roles.
I thought it worked.
But no, 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 no. That's not criticism of the movie. It definitely works. Like
Well,
that's the
especially
joke.
like right, exactly. The fact that they're playing it as a joke, if you came into this, I don't know if straight people actually watched this movie in 1999, but if you came into this as a straight person, the very premise is so absurd.
Anyway, back to telling secrets about Scott. Um, hmm. Okay. When we were in high school, Scott and oh, nope, he's back.
They're kicking me out, but I'm not gonna stay down.
uh, okay, when straight people would go to see this movie in 1999.
Yeah, the very premise of this, and it done in this extremely stark, like blue and pink in this Tim Burton-esque way that you talk about, like, there's such an absurdist feeling to it that you can't help but realize, even subconsciously, oh, there's something wrong with this premise that I had, that gay is a choice or that you can change a gay person.
Sorry, your audio cut out. You can't help but realize, even subconsciously, what?
That there's no such thing as turning a gay person straight.
Yeah, and if there is, it's not this way. Um, they've also given all the girls electric wands to.
What was that about? The electroshock therapy?
No, it's not electroshock therapy. It's supposed to be like a negative conditioning.
So like anytime you have a thought of a like lesbian, you
Yeah, it's
Burn
like a
yourself?
soft.
You shock
It's a
yourself?
yeah, it's a self-administered Ludovico's technique, like
Yeah.
from Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange.
So whenever they have a lesbian thought, they're supposed to shock themselves, you know.
Doesn't that
And
feel sexual?
yeah, that's the joke.
Oh, okay.
That's the joke, is that the goth girl who introduces herself initially as like, I like pain, is constantly shocking herself. Like anytime she's in
Oops,
bed.
lesbian thought.
Yeah, anytime she's in bed, she's hidden under her covers, and all you can hear is like soft moaning and electric zaps.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a joke. Like there are versions of this that are legit. Like you can kind of condition yourself. A classic one is like wearing a rubber band on your wrist and snapping it. Like if you like pain, it doesn't work. If you don't like pain, it's it can become a form of mindfulness kind of thing. Just like being aware every time I do this. Oh, every time I opened up Instagram without realizing it, like snap, like, "Ow, shit, okay." Um, I don't know if it works, but it's the thing people do.
Right.
So they go through step 2, they're doing this shit. We're seeing Megan and Graham, they're getting closer. She's clearly set up now as like obvious love interest. The most effeminate of the boys gets a paper airplane, inviting him to like, it's clearly from some kind of gay liberation thing, saying like, meet us at midnight and we'll show you the other side of this. And they
Yeah, what did you think about the kind of the Rainbow Coalition, if you will?
yeah. Before they go there, Megan does tattle on to the gay boys who are making out, the varsity wrestler and the one who works in retail, I think, or who it is. And one of them, the wrestler, gets kicked out. Next, they all go to the cocksucker.
They go to the club.
They go to
Aren't
the
they
club.
like 16?
Well, I'm looking at
Oh, they all give them fake IDs.
well, yeah, I mean Megan's a senior in college. I think she's 17 or 18.
High
And
school,
apparently
right?
Graham is in college. Sorry, Megan's a senior in high school. Apparently Graham's in college, according to Wikipedia. So, I don't know. They're late teens.
Yeah, late teens.
They go to a bar called the Cocksucker with Larry and Lloyd Morgan Jordan, a married gay couple who used to work at the camp and are now ex gays. Graham and Megan end up dancing with 2 other people. Megan is asked to dance by like this hot lesbian who's credited literally as lipstick lesbian. And
No way. That's
yeah.
funny.
And Graham dances with the goth. Goth touches her butt. Megan gets jealous and runs out behind the bar. Graham follows, and they short fight followed by long makeout sesh. Goth sees it and is unhappy, and like they keep being these hints of jealousy, and it felt like it was setting up plot that never happened. I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. But how did you feel about the relationship between Megan and Graham? Did it feel authentically lesbian?
Yeah, I thought so. I thought so. I appreciated Graham like pushing Megan to dance with the lipstick lesbian. And what was interesting was like Megan's the one who got jealous. Graham clearly has a crush on Megan, but still is like, go dance with this hot lesbian. Like, I'm trying to help you find yourself here. Megan's the one who can't handle her dancing with another girl. But that makes sense. Like, it's carrying over kind of normative monogamy culture in a way that it doesn't, I don't know. Like, polyamory also definitely, like, the language and spread and prominence of polyamory was not nearly as wide. And so that was the only thing where I was watching it. Like this is just something I've been thinking about recently. Like as a polyamorous person, since being a polyamorous person, any sort of love triangle or romantic drama tension that's based on monogamy, like the assumption of monogamy, falls so much more flat with me.
Like, just the three of you should just get together.
You just date them both. But I mean, they're teenagers and it's their first relationships, and I was very, very possessed of jealous monogamy when I was that age, so I get it.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Yeah, it didn't feel unrealistic to me in any way. They kiss; it's very sweet. Graham is a much better kisser than Megan's boyfriend, and she doesn't have to fantasize about cheerleader tits.
Megan really falls for her.
Yeah,
which makes the third step in the conversion therapy, family therapy, even more heartbreaking. They meet their families, and a lot of these families are of the ilk that if this conversion therapy doesn't work, they're not welcome home.
Yeah.
They say to Graham, they say that to Megan. Megan's parents say, you're actually not welcome home if you don't come back straight. Graham's parents, Graham clearly comes from an upper class family, because they say, forget about your trust fund. And then they prisoner's dilemma these two girls, where
of course you see it this way, Scott.
Isn't that what happens?
No,
why don't you explain what happened?
No, I want to hear your explanation. I just think it's funny that that's how you saw it, because please continue.
They get caught, right? Doing lesbian things, and
they make out again at the premises of True Direction.
And then they get questioned, but they get brought in separately to be questioned. And the camp counselor says, you will be kicked out of here unless you do one thing for me. My son, Rock, who's this, and I remember Rock when I watched this the first time, thinking like, oh shit, that guy's hot as hell. Like, that's
he's
my
your type. He's definitely
very much. Just like pure himbo, dumb jock, idiot, gay guy.
Yeah.
So his mom is the head counselor, and she says, I will let you stay in this camp if you go through the straight kind of like graduation with Rock. And Megan says no. Megan says, I want to be with Graham. But Graham takes the bait.
Yeah.
How do you not see that as prisoner's dilemma?
I'm not saying you're wrong that it is. The words prisoner's dilemma never popped into my head.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I'm not as much of a fan of that kind of thing. What's that Korean game show you like?
Genius. The Genius.
Yeah, it's all about that shit. Look, there's two kinds of people. There's prisoner's dilemma people, and there's other people.
So Graham takes the bait.
Yeah.
And she says, I will stay here. Implying I want my trust fund more than I want Megan.
And I think that was sort of the weakest part of the movie to me. The entire movie, like, it's an inversion of their relationship and where they stand. The entire movie, Graham has been the rebellious one. Graham has been the out and proud lesbian who looks down on the whole process. And I guess, like, do you think it's explicit that she's doing it for the trust fund?
That's how I read it.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable reading of it. Watching it, I was unclear what changed for her. It felt out of the character as I understood her to make that choice. And I understood it from a screenplay perspective. I understood it from a piecing together the math of a Hollywood movie. I didn't understand it from the character's perspective.
Yeah, I just think she had more to lose, basically.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, Megan also lost her family and was going to end up in the exact same position.
I know they kind of glossed over that as if it wasn't that big of a deal, but she becomes homeless.
She's kicked out.
Yeah. Which is an experience you still hear about on like Drag Race and stuff, but is something that is less and less common. And so maybe in 1999, the fact that it was, they didn't even consider this that big of a deal. To me, it hit pretty hard that, like, fuck, your parents aren't going to let you home. You're a 17-year-old homeless person now. Just because you're a lesbian?
Yeah, I mean, it still happens. I've definitely met people who have this story, who are our age or younger.
Ugh, it's
So
heartbreaking.
yeah, but it is like we, the audience, know that that's intense, but it's not like when her parents say like, "Don't come back." There's no like dun dun dun. It's definitely just kind of presented as matter of fact. Like, yeah, it's just one of the things that happens.
So
It
she goes
sucks.
to Larry and what are their names?
Lloyd and Larry Morgan Gordon.
Yeah. They go to she goes to Lloyd and Larry's and they take her in where she finds the wrestler again,
Mm-hmm. Dolph.
um, Dolph, and they concoct a plan to get their significant others back. And
Yeah,
then we
and
get the
Dolph is
final.
really happy. Dolph is like, "Thank
Yeah.
you so much for getting me kicked out of that place." He's wearing a full like rainbow jumpsuit.
The rainbow
Uh,
jumpsuit killed me.
it's amazing. And I
That's what
also,
gay people wear.
yeah, I also, well, that is what a lot of like recently out gay people wear.
Mhm.
And I also like before we get to their plan and the climax of the movie, I loved that little scene with Lloyd and Larry where like they disagree on what to do with Megan. I don't know which is which, but the taller bear one is much more kind of militant, like this is just your life now, and the shorter one is um the more sensitive, like she's not ready for that yet. And and the bear, Morgan Gordon, is like, I'm feeling like nothing I can say is good enough to you, and that you don't like appreciate any of my contributions here. And they have they have this little like touchy feely expression of emotions and sharing, culminating with like Lloyd Lloyd is sorry, Larry is sorry. They're talking about themselves in the third person. They kiss and make
Yeah, it's
up.
really cute.
It's really cute. I like modeling open and vulnerable conversational style between these two gay men. Okay, so Scott Dietz. Scott was oh shit, he's back. Okay.
What were you gonna say about me?
Every time you leave, I get ready to tell a deep Scott secret.
Oh, no. Well, I don't really have secrets.
Well, the joke is that I never actually tell one. I like
Oh,
do
okay.
enough setup to buy you time to get back.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So they have this. I love this. I just thought it was really cute. It was a lovely moment and it was fun.
Then they get to graduation,
Mhm.
the final act of the movie, where the kids have to go through this final, um, test, like a kind of like a obstacle course, basically, to prove their bona fides
No, they've already
that they're
done that
straight.
because Megan passed that.
Oh, that's part of step 3?
They're like,
I thought that they had to do this to get to graduation.
well, Megan confirmed herself straight enough. Like
Oh, you're right, before she
she
gets
passed
kicked
the
out.
gauntlet to be confirmed straight. The only one who fails that is is the little femboy, who then goes on like he yells at the others and he's like, well, good job, you're all better at lying than I am. And he's funny. The character is funny.
I loved
He
him.
ends his dramatic speech with shit. Oh, storms off. Then Megan and Graham make out. Megan gets kicked out.
Got
But
it.
we're at the final stage after proving you're straight is simulated sexual contact.
Right, that's the part with Rock, the
Yeah,
hot gay guy. Yeah.
they
What'd
come
you think
out
of
in
that
these
part?
hilarious Adam and Eve bodysuits with like leaves over the genitals and nips. And they have to simulate sex, and it's all being guided by the director of the camp. It's so funny.
It's really
Um,
uncomfortable.
yeah, one of the boys asks like, "What about foreplay?" And she's like, "Real men don't do foreplay. They get in, they dump their load, and they pull out."
Very Handmaid's Tale.
Very Handmaid's Tale. Also, if you're a gay woman who has sex with men, probably how you want them to do it.
Interesting. Right, because she's the one who's dictating how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And they all pass. It's very silly. It's just a silly joke scene. It's very awkward and awful. And now we're at graduation.
Now we get to graduation.
It looks like a wedding. White benches, a little altar.
The boys come out in these hideous blue vinyl suits. Gayest thing you could possibly put them in.
Yeah, they're so funny.
And then the girls have this similar material pink dresses.
Yeah, all the parents are wearing like matching white suits and dresses.
Mm-hmm.
And
then why don't you describe the denouement, if you will?
Yeah, they're doing the graduation. They're doing the thing. There's like some very silly shit. Megan and Dolph are wearing camo, and they like ride up, and they're crawling around in the grass. Somehow, no one sees them. And I really wanted a zoomed out shot where we could see Megan doing her army crawl through the wide open field. She pulls Graham down on her way down the aisle and says, like, I love you. Like, I want you. It's not enough. There's only one thing she can do to save Graham from a life of pseudo heterosexuality. And what is it, Scott?
Cheerleading.
The most low energy cheerleading you'll ever see.
I loved the cheerleading motif.
I loved it too. I just was so excited to get like a ready, okay.
It killed me at the end when they brought it back to cheerleading. There's this idea of who lesbians are and who gay people are, and having the two who get kicked out be the wrestler and the cheerleader. Like, I think that's actually important for a kid to see. Like, there's all these different ways to be gay or lesbian. So for the cheerleader to be the one to go to the camp and then actually declare her love of cheerleading. She even says it to Graham. Graham kind of assumes that she was doing it to fit in or to get close to girls or whatever. And Megan's like, no, I actually really enjoy this sport.
Yeah, when she and Graham hook up for the first time and Megan has her first like sexual experience with a girl, she says, like, I don't know if I've ever felt like that before. Or like the only thing that is similar is when I'm cheerleading.
Yeah, cheerleading is the only thing that actually makes me happy.
Yeah, she loves cheerleading.
I loved that. It calls back to the title of the movie. And then it kind of culminates in this final low energy, hilarious cheer.
Yeah.
Which is a rom-com staple. Say Anything with John Cusack when they play the big boombox, the Peter Gabriel song. It's that sort of moment where in front of everyone she gets up and does her really terrible cheerleading routine.
It's an awful cheer. Oh my god. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want to be away from you anymore. 5, 6, 7, 8. I want you to be my mate. It's awful.
But it works.
It's successful. She convinces Graham to run away with her. They make out in the back of the pickup truck on their way to a life of being homeless lesbians together. And that's the end.
Yeah.
I mean, we do see that her dad has accepted her in the credits.
Oh, I didn't get that far.
You didn't watch the credits?
No. I'm not a credits person, but
I only watch the credits, especially in 90s movies, to see because a lot of times they show clips of like epilogue stuff in the credits. And the epilogue clip in this movie is we see her dad, Megan's dad, at a like friends and parents of gay children thing, big workshop. And it looks like he's maybe even leading the workshop. So like it is definitely communicated that her dad at least has accepted her. So she's probably not homeless. She probably
that's nice.
Still lives with at least her dad. And then we might see there's a woman there who's all like dressed up with sunglasses and kind of hiding I couldn't tell if it was Megan's mom or Graham's mom. One of the moms is there. But yeah, no, it's nice. Like it's the don't worry, they're not going to a life of being homeless, parentless lesbians moment. Okay. Finally, I can tell you a story about Scott. So, when Scott and I were doing driver's ed, oh no, Scott's back.
Wait, tell the story. I want to hear it.
Do you want me to tell this story, Scott?
I don't even know what story it is.
Scott, you don't remember any embarrassing stories about when you were taking driver's ed?
Oh, you're going to tell that story?
No, I wasn't going to tell it. It was a joke for you and me alone.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, when I say I don't have secrets, it's not like I want everything told on a podcast.
Yeah, of course. But aren't you tantalized, listener?
Anyway,
yeah.
Sarah, given that my audio keeps cutting out, why don't we rate the movie?
Yeah, let's rate the movie. Okay, can we give our listeners a sort of context and remind me what our scores have been so far?
So, I was actually thinking about this today. I think it's 0 out of 37. I don't know if we set the low end to 0 or 1, but it makes sense to me that something could get a 0 out of 37. What do you think?
You know, at LARP this weekend, we were all rating the sexiness of animals on a scale of -2 to 13.
Love it.
And I kind of liked the bottom being -2.
Okay, so we'll say out of 37, knowing that if something was so abhorrent, we could actually go negative.
We can get to -2 if we want. Actually, I think there's no bottom limit.
I was going to say, you could go lower.
Yeah, we can. We reserve the right to go as negative as we like, but our positivity is capped at 37.
Capped at 37. Love it.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me pull up our...
Do you have some of our scores? Do you have your notebook?
Sort of. I started keeping it on a note.
I think I can remember.
Holdovers, we gave 30 out of 37.
Yeah, Holdovers was the first 30.
Mm-hmm.
There was
Bros, we gave 23 out of 37.
Mm-hmm.
Saltburn, I believe, was a 25.
25 and a half.
25 and a half. And Bottoms was somewhere like a 18.
Yeah.
And I sort of think of it in quadrants, right? Like it's easy to think about the 30 to 37 as your peak art form, your 20 to 29 as you're like, yeah, this was good, but we see some flaws in it. Your 10 to 19 is sort of you're like, there's something wrong with this movie or this art form. And then anywhere below 9, single digits or even into negative, it's like there's a major flaw here that like this is irresponsible or we really don't recommend this.
Yeah. And what I'll say about this movie is I had no real critiques of it while I was watching it. There were moments where I found myself on my phone or I was bored, but that's not the movie's fault. That's my absolutely destroyed attention span's fault. And
I was the same way though. We maybe we're watching a lot of boring movies, but I found myself drifting away from the screen quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem is that this movie is like so formulaic. Like this movie is a constructed movie. It hits the notes that a movie should kind of hit, right? Like I feel like it follows the save the cat formula or whatever. This movie at the level of like as a work of sort of art or cinema, I don't think it's as good of a movie as The Holdovers. But this is consistently ranked like the best queer movie, you know? And I feel like I'm missing something. I liked it. I had fun. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny.
It's a tough one because it's 25 years old and it feels like an important film in queer cinema history. And so I want to sort of inflate the score.
Honor that. Right. Yeah. I feel pressure to inflate the score, you know?
That being said, I don't know if I ever want to watch this again. It just like, there's something a little bit like one note about it.
It's definitely one note. It's not a nuanced movie. It's not a subtle movie, and that's okay. Like, it's a silly movie. What I do find interesting about this movie is like the whole justification that was given for Bottoms is like, well, we wanted a raunchy teen comedy for the queers. There wasn't one, so we had to make one. But this is a raunchy teen comedy for the queers.
I hate that kind of marketing. I don't think you should ever talk about something as the first. Like, we're in 2024. Everything has been done. Like, if you're going to tell your own story, great, but don't market it as we're doing something no one's ever done.
Yeah, like, I do think this movie was what Bottoms thought it was.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it's not
I'm in the 20s, right? Like, it's definitely
no, it's
something that I
solidly
would.
in the 20s.
Yeah.
If I'm at someone's house and we're eating dinner and we're just, like, kinda hanging out and we want something that we can put on, but still have conversation over, like, and someone's like, "I wanna put on, but I'm a cheerleader," totally. Put
Yeah,
it
it's like a
on.
Netflix movie.
Yeah, I don't mind having it on, but I also don't mind talking to people during the movie.
Yes.
I'm really okay, how do we think this compares to Saltburn?
The more that I step away from Saltburn, the more I have fonder memories of it.
Interesting.
But I also don't know if it's necessarily something that I want to compare that one to one. I think it'll get harder as we do more of these to do that.
Yeah. I wanna give this movie credit for having a $1 million budget.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is something that I'm gonna be more positive on than I probably should be.
Mhm. But, okay, give us a number, Scott.
26.
26. Um,
What do you think?
okay, for what it is, for the genre of movie that it is, silly comedy, not trying to be high art or anything, I think it's successful. I think 26 feels reasonable to me.
You're agreeing with me?
I'll agree with you.
Okay. So we don't even need an average. Well, average of 26 and 26 is 26.
26. Wow. That's some fast math there, Scott.
Thank you. I was in advanced math in ninth grade.
Oh my god, really? Well, we lost Scott. Okay, so the story about Driver's Ed. Um, I was just looking it up real quick. So yeah, this movie had the equivalent of a $1.8 million budget in today's money, and Bottoms had an $11 million budget, and like this
Yeah,
movie did so much more with that
it
budget.
was stylized. It had a real point of view.
Yeah,
It knew
first
what it wanted to
movie,
say.
first feature film for the director. Like I thought it was really solid. Um, 26. Like it's a solid movie. It's a good movie, and I think if I had to guess for like why are we giving it a 26? Why are we saying this is a solid movie that I enjoyed watching? I don't know if I would watch it again anytime soon. And I'm just interested in the fact that like that's our reaction to this movie when like all these lists ranking queer movies have it so high and it's like such a cult classic for people.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that like I'm watching it for the first time in 2024. You know, I'm
Yeah,
not watching it
and
in
I think
1999.
like how much queer cinema really was there in the 90s or even in the 2000s?
Yeah, I don't know. Like none. Like I
None.
so I totally understand how someone could watch this movie in 1999. You're in high school, you're a kid, and like it being really important and forming a really heightened and strong attachment to it. I totally get that. Like,
Yeah.
so if you're listening to this and you're like, but I'm a Cheerleader is like one of my favorite movies. I watched it when I was 16 and it was like the first thing I'd ever seen that like let me see a representation of myself. And you're not wrong. um, yeah.
Yeah, there are some albums that I grew up on that just are classic albums to me because of the time in
Yeah.
which I heard them and the
And I,
context.
I can still rewatch Pokemon the first movie and love it, even though it's like objectively not a great movie. I mean, it's a kid's movie.
Yeah, and I also think 26, if you've listened to this whole thing,
Oh yeah,
may
it's
feel
good.
high
True.
given our critiques of it. I'm not sure that our conversation, which talked about it being a little boring or, the plot, there wasn't much to dissect necessarily. So 26 maybe feels high. What I wanna say
Yeah.
about that is that our number and our kind of our journey to get to that number are a little bit dissociated from each other. I think we can have critiques and still feel like it's generally a positive movie. And this one being so formative for so many people, being a 1999 film, we're giving it some extra points there. We're definitely inflating the score, but where do I
Yeah.
want to see this in the context of our 37-point review system? I think that 26 feels like we're giving it its due and its credit for being one of the first and for
Mhm.
doing a pretty good job and for holding up.
Yeah, and I think also, like, legitimately making a movie for $1 million is impressive.
Mhm.
That's indie shit. That's indie shit, right? Like, I know $1 million sounds like a lot of money because it is, but when you think about how many people are involved in making a feature film, those sets had to be built. Those sets had to be designed. They had to be constructed. They had to be painted. They had to be assembled. They had to pay for that huge piece of land. Everything had to be lit and shot and filmed and edited and colored. The costumes had to be designed and sewed. Like, so much work goes into making a movie, even a movie that is so much of, like, really just one or two locations. Though, well, really, there's like 5 locations in this movie. I think it's impressive what they accomplished.
I
And I
agree.
think making this movie in 1999 was actually, it's amazing that they made it. It's not surprising that they didn't have more of a budget, but they made it. And that's like, I respect it a lot for that. Even if, like, also, I'd say for me, I don't, Scott, I think you're probably the same, but I think you have to grade movies for what they are, right? Like if you give me a big stone and say this is a chair and I can successfully sit on it, I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good chair. If you give me like, I might rate it like, wow, that's kind of like a 6 or 7 out of 10 chair. And if you give me a big stone and say like, this is a pot for cooking, I'm like, yeah, that's a really shit pot. That's like a 0 out of 10 pot.
This is a
Um,
crazy analogy, but
Thank you.
yeah, it's an
And
expectation.
right. So this movie, what I'm building to is like, this movie is a silly comedy. That's all it's trying to be. It's not telling you that it's more than that. And so you grade it on how successfully it achieves that goal.
I agree.
As opposed to a movie like Inception, where Christopher Nolan is trying to tell you, like, this is some deep philosophical shit, man.
He's taking
And
himself
like,
so seriously. He's trying
it's
to
so
make the greatest movie
seriously,
of all time.
yeah, it's presenting itself like a deep literary piece of art when really what it is an extremely successful action movie. But because it tries to categorize itself as like piece of art and philosophy, it's much less successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Whereas
agree.
this movie knows what it is, it does it well, and it's a 26.
26.
Fantastic. Scott, did you want to talk about RuPaul?
Well, first I want to decide what we're doing next and then sort of like finish our podcast and then maybe record offline about RuPaul. What do you think?
Okay. Like, you just want to talk to me about RuPaul, you don't want it on the record?
No, like on the live, but not for the
Oh,
not
okay.
for the pod.
Cool. So 26 out of 37 for But I'm a Cheerleader. If you agree, write a comment about it on YouTube or let us know by following us on Instagram and giving us a message, or going and finding our YouTube channel and commenting, or comment on the Apple Podcast. If you disagree, do the exact same thing. And if you neither agree nor disagree, then still do those exact same things. Follow the podcast, subscribe, give it likes, give it comments. And if you both agree and disagree to complete the Nagarjuna quadrilemma, then still do the same things. Like and subscribe to the podcast. Give it a comment wherever you're consuming it.
And next week, should we do Poor Things?
Poor Things. Next week, we'll do Poor Things. Love it.
I think it's streaming by then. If
Yeah,
not, we can
I
do
also
Anatomy of a Fall, but I would love to do Poor Things.
don't tell anyone, but I definitely have methods by which I can obtain Poor Things, even if it's not streaming.
Ooh,
Don't
that
tell,
sounds sinister.
don't tell my internet provider.
Okay, Poor Things next week. Same
Poor
time?
Things next week, same time, 3 p.m. on Monday. Thank you so
Maybe we'll
much.
actually have a theme song by then?
Yeah, no, we'll definitely have a theme song by then. We're going to have a really good theme song.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for listening to Nerd Squad Reviews. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. Scott, did you have a good time?
I had a great time, except for my audio, but still a great time
Yeah,
with you always.
your audio. Yeah, look, sometimes
Sucked.
you're in Colorado. I'm going to be in Galveston in a couple weeks, and we're probably going to have the same issue. So that's life. And if you like hearing us talk about movies, and you have a movie that you'd like to hear us talk about, give us a comment wherever you're listening to this podcast and let us know. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram at Sarah Rose Kaplan, where a lot of times you will be able to see me promoting this very podcast, promoting my improv workshops, or just talking about stuff that feels important or funny to me. And you can find my best friend Scott Wise where?
At Scott_YS.
At Scott_YS on Instagram. Thank you so much. Scott, you're my best friend. I think I'm your best friend.
You're my best friend.
And listener, you're our best friend. We'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, Scott.
Hello. I'm so sorry for the audio.
No, it happens. It happens. DK Moon, I also miss Mary Lou and Vic. I mean, I LARP with Mary Lou, so I was with her all weekend. But
we'll have her on, I'm sure.
We are definitely going to start having guests on to talk about movies with us. And don't worry, Mary Lou and Vic and Zach, we are all in conversation. We're trying to schedule season 2 of Maidens of the Spear to go through and review the second season. It will happen. It's just all 3 of them are fancy, successful actors and comedians, so coordinating schedules to find a time when all 4 of us can sit and stream together is tough. But we are working on it. So hopefully you'll see them soon. Thank you for listening, though. Thank you for checking out our new show. Evil Yvonne, thanks so much for listening. I'm sorry so much, y'all, about the audio problems, but you know how it goes. It's just life.
It'll be better next time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Scott, what do you want to talk about RuPaul?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Drag Race. I love competition reality TV shows, and this is an explicitly queer competition reality TV show with a lot of gay themes. I have watched every season probably multiple times at this point, and the first time I watched it, I remember telling you like, "Oh, Drag Race, like super queer. I bet you love it." And you said actually quite the opposite. And you had a lot of thoughts about RuPaul and their beliefs on gender and what they espouse in terms of like it's sort of like the monoculture of queer media, RuPaul's Drag Race at this point, and it's kind of taken over globally too. And so when RuPaul showed up in this movie, I knew you had some thoughts about them, and I wanted to hear where you are with them at this point.
Does RuPaul use they them pronouns?
RuPaul, I have heard RuPaul referred to as he, she, and they.
Okay.
On the show.
Cool. Any pronouns kind of person. Yeah, so what I think is when we first had that conversation, I was probably expressing a stronger perspective than I probably should have been because I don't know the show. And I don't know RuPaul very well.
You having a strong opinion?
I know. So like I have a lot of thoughts that like surround RuPaul, and definitely I have a lot of thoughts surrounding the phenomenon of Drag Race, as you said. As far as thoughts on RuPaul himself, a human being, I can't claim to have any legitimate thoughts there because I mean he's just not. They're not a person that I've consumed a lot of what they've put out there. I thought he did fine as an actor here. I didn't know it was him. I'm glad I didn't know it was him because it probably would have made my experience. I would have been distracted by it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 90s, RuPaul was the first drag queen to become an A-lister. They had song on top 40 billboards. They were an actor. They were in TV shows, both in and out of drag. So the visibility of RuPaul was unparalleled for a drag queen,
Mm.
and then RuPaul's ability to take this art form and give a platform to all these other drag queens has been pretty unparalleled. All of these queer
Totally.
people getting careers out of this because of this one TV show is something that I think is admirable, and is definitely an express purpose of the TV show.
Yeah.
I also think, having watched it sequentially, there has been a lot of reckoning and adaptation of the
Mm.
thought of what drag can be. And
Mhm.
instead of it, in the first, let's say, 8 seasons or so, it's RuPaul judging how good of a drag queen are you in my framework of what a drag queen should be.
Yeah.
And then after some things came out about RuPaul and other things happened in the culture, Drag Race is now a little bit more of, let's showcase all different kinds of drag. And so they've had trans masculine contestants, trans feminine
Mm.
contestants. They've had bio queens, which are cis women who do drag. Um, they've had non-binary drag queens, and so they really have tried to do a job of addressing what the earlier seasons did, which is what you were commenting on when we originally
Right.
talked about it.
Yeah, and this would have been years ago that we would have had that conversation also. Like, it probably would have been 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so for viewers, to provide context, like, my thoughts on, as I said, I have no thoughts on RuPaul, I guess. Um, it's not their fault that they're famous or that they've been influential, and I don't know them. I know some of those criticisms, like the fact that it was considered cheating for a drag queen to be on HRT, for example, which was like an explicitly trans exclusionary policy on the show. Like, you're not a real drag queen if you're a trans woman. um, and I think that's the relationship of trans femininity with drag queenery is long and complex. And like, you go back far enough, and there's basically impossible to disentangle. Marsha P. Johnson, for example, who would have identified as a street queen for much of her life, and like probably would have identified, like, towards the end of her life, started identifying as trans and using like she her pronouns, but for much of her life would have identified as like a street queen, which was a form of gay man that was like basically the street variant of a drag queen. It's like a drag queen who's in drag on the street. um and also it's like street queen's a much more complex term than that has to do with, also intertied with the experience of like sex workers, and sex workers specifically of like a trans feminine. Anyway, I'm not an expert on that, but that's just to say, like, the labels have been so intermingled historically, and lots of trans people have gotten their first experiences of doing any kind of gender fuckery or gender play or gender exploration in the world of drag. Lots of trans people, um, especially like black trans people or trans people of color in big cities, have gotten their introductions to queer spaces and to gender expansiveness through like the ballroom scene, which has a long history with both communities. Um, but now, like, things things in the world of queerness that are always indefinable, are always sort of stretchy and flexible and gray and boundaryless, um, have started to become more calcified in their categorizations and in their definitions, strict lines being drawn between this identity and that, in ways that I don't think are like necessarily good, but um, it's a natural process. Like, once enough people have their eyes on a thing, the human tendency is to categorize, divide, and taxonomize so that we can understand. And now you see like kind of trans woman versus drag queen, very different things. What I found frustrating when I first started coming out as a trans woman is a lot of the reaction I got from cis people trying to be nice were things like, "Oh, well, I love RuPaul's Drag Race." And I was frustrated because it's like, well, that's not what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nothing against drag, but drag is an art form. Like, drag is a performance art. Drag is, in many ways, a subclass of clowning as a performance art. Like, drag drag is a costume. Drag is a form of comedy, and that is not what being a trans woman
It's the exact
is.
opposite.
It's the exact opposite. I'm not putting on a costume, I'm taking off a mask. And so the fact that people would so often identify what I was trying to tell them with this thing that felt like the opposite of what I was doing was extremely frustrating. And the fact that like RuPaul's Drag Race had such a dominant cultural hold on people's understanding of what it was to be queer, that that was the only lens through which they could understand me, was incredibly frustrating. And so I definitely had a lot of like frustration with drag as an art form that was centered around that was like my negative feelings towards drag were definitely exaggerated by my frustration with the way that I would have cis people interact with me.
Yeah, your own
Um,
experience of coming out, absolutely.
yeah, with my
And
own
you're
experience of
right.
coming out.
Drag Race is one of the ways that straight people understand queerness, which
Right.
is why the progression of the show's ability to showcase trans people. Season 15, which is the most recent season, had a trans female winner
Hmm.
who talked a lot about this, and much of her reasoning for going on the show was that the show had changed, both the show and the context of the macro, like the world around it had changed. That she had not felt herself represented on the show in the first 10 seasons, even though she was like she's by far one of her name is Sasha Colby. She's like one of the most famous drag queens, but that was not she did not feel welcome. And so joining season 15 when the world needed what she has said, positive representation, and this is the platform by which you're able to do so. Yeah, she's going to go on it and she's going to slay the show and she's going to win hands down. She
Hmm.
did.
Yeah.
So I do think that there has been a progression, and I'm, I know you don't watch the show, but curious as your since you are further along in your journey, has your opinion or your frustration with drag as an art form changed?
So what I'll say about that is drag still makes me uncomfortable. Um, like it to witness, like I don't like watching it. And but a big part of that is I and especially like live. Like I would not go to a drag show. I've been invited to lots of them. And but the reason I don't want to be there is I know that so much of the audience is cis and so much of the audience is cis het. And I just like feel them identifying me with what's happening on stage. And that makes me uncomfortable. Um, and also, like, to be honest, there's lots of times when I'll see drag queens who are so much better at being like feminine and sexy, like specifically sexy in a feminine way than I am. They're so much more comfortable with their femininity. They're so much more comfortable with like how to be sexy in that way. They're so much more comfortable with makeup and with clothing, and they're like a lot of them just look a lot hotter than I do when I try to be hot, and I don't like that either. Like
Mm.
that makes me both insecure and often jealous. Like having been on hormone replacement therapy for years, having had like a literal extremely drastic facial surgery to feminize my face, I get misgendered all the time still. Like at LARP, it's LARP is such an interesting thing because the LARP is very queer. There's so many trans people there and queer people. And I people will always default to using he him for me if they don't know me. Even when I'm playing a woman.
Hmm.
And so being at drag shows and seeing like cis men, even if they're really effeminate and gender fucky cis men, like being so much more successful at the performance of femininity, that can just be hard for me. So I don't like it. Um, that's not a criticism of the drag queens. What I will say is I've met a lot of drag queens. I've been in enough queer spaces long enough that obviously I'm meeting drag queens a lot. And I don't know about the people who are like RuPaul level. I've never met any famous drag queens, but I meet people who like do weird, funky indie drag, and I think they're all really cool. Like every single one of them I've met has only been super nice to me. They've only been really respectful of like me and my pronouns and my gender, and like most of the ones I've met are also some kind of trans. Like they might not identify as a trans woman, but they're some kind of gender non-conforming. Um, and so like none of my negative thoughts are like at drag queens, drag performers. I like them. Um, the cultural dominance of drag still does frustrate me.
Yes.
Like, for example, Dropout, um, Dropout, the streaming service, the comedy streaming service. They had a whole like short run drag special edition of 2020 called Dungeons and Drag Queens. Like they have drag queens on all the time. They do drag shit all the time. My girlfriend Willa, who is also a trans woman, is currently working at Dropout building a set for a new drag show, like Monet's Sleepover. Do you know who Monet Exchange is?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so like her show is moving to Dropout, I guess, and they're building her set. And they have not, as far as I know, had a trans woman. They have a lot of trans masc and non-binary people on their stuff, but they haven't had a single trans woman comedian on any of their things. They had one friend who's a trans woman who participated on an episode of Actually, but otherwise, like that's been it. And like, there's so much. Sorry, I'm just waiting for Scott to come back. Yeah, so I guess hi. It does frustrate me that like I know that people are uncomfortable around me as a trans woman when they're not uncomfortable around drag queens because drag is presented as a form of comedic buffoonery.
It's so mainstream now that people understand the framework of drag.
Yeah,
but
they
there's not
understand
been a piece of entertainment, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that has really done that for trans people.
Well, and drag is also in many ways like, oh, this might be a contentious point for some people. RuPaul would probably disagree with this. A drag show is way less challenging and radical to a cis audience than just a normal trans person like being there.
Say more.
Because
in your point,
drag is radical and challenging in the sense that it like forces an audience to question homophobia, etc. But it's like, even though the performers themselves might be doing all sorts of like interesting gender fuck shit and breaking all kinds of boundaries and stuff, the cis audience isn't forced to, because it's a performance, because it's a costume, because it's comedy. Like, whether or not it's the intent of the performer, so many of the cis audience still gets to laugh at haha man in dress. Like, it doesn't force them to actually question. It doesn't challenge any of their actual understandings of the gender binary in the way that a trans person does. A trans person is saying, like, look, I'm coming to you and telling you that I am a woman, that your understanding of the ontology of sex and gender is like limited and wrong. And therefore, your understanding of your own identity and your own place and how you fit into the rest of this broader society, how you interact with the people around you, is unstable, more unstable than you realize. Whereas drag doesn't force people to do that, because you leave the drag show and you don't have to think about that anymore. Like maybe a straight cis dude like finds himself attracted to a drag queen, and maybe that like raises some questions, but it doesn't challenge the ontology of gender in the same way.
You know, it's interesting to hear your perspective always, but as the COO of Nasty Pig, I come at the drag race phenomenon from the exact opposite angle. It's not actually opposite, but it's another angle, which is that drag has become the dominant form of how straight people interact with queerness. Through season 6 or 7, the predominant audience of Drag Race was gay people, and now it's straight women.
Yeah, very much.
And a lot of those straight women are forcing their boyfriends or male partners, whatever, to watch it with them. And so there's a contingent of straight men watching this as well. As such, this dominance has sanded off the edges of gay culture. And you even see it in the show. There's like poppers
What do you
jokes
mean by that?
and fisting jokes. Like the sexuality part of gayness is actually a big part of drag. That's what they're fucking with. It's gay men who are using their platform for like if you go to a drag show at a gay bar, it is very much for the gay audience, and so there's a lot of sexuality. There's a lot there's a part about the male gaze, and so there's like drag queens will like lift the shirts up off men, and there's just like a lot of sexuality that's baked into it. Drag Race has sanded off those edges over time because of the audience that it now has, and so it doesn't force it no longer forces straight people to contend with the sex part of sexuality. And as someone who works in that field, like the point of Nasty Pig is to help clothe people to have the sex they want to have and to feel sexy in whatever the way they want to, and to perform masculinity in a queer way through clothing. Drag Race has it's such a juggernaut. We have conversations internally of like, do we try to give counter programming to Drag Race to showcase that there is still a form of gay male sexuality that doesn't have anything to do with dressing up as a woman? We don't really see much of that anymore.
I mean,
to the rocket ship and try to become a part of it. And I think both are legitimate, but it's kind of like it's such a part of gay culture that there's no way around dealing with it.
Yeah. I totally like. I think the only queer media that really has any of the same purchase on mainstream cishet society as Drag Race does is Queer Eye.
Yes,
I like Queer Eye a lot better. I like Queer Eye. I watch it. It's definitely still guilty of like not really being challenging. They're not making poppers and fisting jokes. Like that's just not what the show is, right? But like Jonathan Van Ness is challenging to people, and the show does a good job of like. I like that show normalizes like the way Jonathan Van Ness is just in life.
Right. That's not drag. That's not a performance.
It's not drag. It's just what they do. It's
Yeah.
just what they are. It's who they are. Which I like.
Which is much closer to the experience of a trans person than drag.
Yeah, I mean JVN is trans. Like Jonathan Van Ness is like a non-binary.
Non-binary. Person. Yeah.
Right. And they're married to a man, and they mostly they have a big beard, and they wear mostly dresses and feminine clothes, and like they do a lot of beauty makeup and stuff. I think JVN's really cool. JVN also like lives in Austin, and has been a huge like participant in political protest, like against anti-trans laws and anti-drag bills and stuff in Texas. And I really like that they've been using their platform to actually do that. But Queer Eye is like, those are the only, aside from JVN, like the other Anthony and Bobby and Tan and Karamo, those are much more of your classic, just kind of like mask gay dudes, you know? Like Karamo and Anthony, like they're all definitely faggy, but like Karamo and Anthony are definitely like just sort of guys. Tan is a little definitely more like femme gender fucky, and Bobby's also just like a guy.
Bobby left the show.
I know he did. Yeah, but he's still in the most recent season, and I don't think he left it for drama reasons. I think he just he's moving on. Did he? Do you have an inside scoop on Queer Eye?
They talked about it on my favorite podcast, Who Weekly, and his Instagram on the surface looks like there's no drama, but then you dig a couple levels deeper, and there's definitely drama. We just don't know.
Really? Oh, yeah. What's the drama?
I don't know.
Fuck.
But it was very cliquey apparently, which
well, that makes
of
sense.
course it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. That's clear.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I guess that would be the closest you're seeing to a presentation of like normal, not normal, but like you're just kind of standard. Your standard cis gay man. Like those are the most prominent iterations of that in media right now. There's a lot of good trans lawyers, DK Moon, and they're not able to stop what's happening, unfortunately. But they're trying, and I respect them for that. If you want to see a good trans lawyer, follow Chase Strangio, working with the ACLU.
Oh yeah, I read an article about them.
Yeah, he's cool. Anyway,
this is very enlightening. Thank you for staying on with me. And
yeah,
I think this conversation is interesting from both of our angles because I'm a fan of Drag Race. I'm a fan of drag, but it also challenges my
I got that. I knew that's what you were referencing, DK Man. I just sorry, Scott.
No, I like hearing your perspective about it too, because I know it's also evolving, and this is just like such a mainstreamified version of queer media that we just have to contend with now.
Yeah, I'd say like the main thing that frustrates me is I feel like I would be more successful right now as a comedian in LA doing what I do if I were a drag queen. If I did drag, like I'm pretty confident. Like people like drag queens, people like drag shows, and a lot of, especially in LA, like a lot of the queer comedy scene is also tied to drag. And that's not surprising, and that's just is what it is. But I guess I find it frustrating. Like, yeah,
makes sense.
Anyway,
well, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It's something I would want to think about and talk about more. I do want to talk about, like, not today because we got to go. You got to go back to your friends in Colorado and stuff. But what we didn't touch on that I do actually want to think about more and talk about more is RuPaul's famous, like, you're born naked, the rest is drag, or whatever.
Yeah, we should unpack that.
Because I do maintain that that's been harmful.
I love your perspective on it. And it's interesting, too, because I work for a clothing company, which is like another angle about the same thing.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll talk more about that offline and maybe think about how to talk about it online.
Okay.
Enjoy Colorado. Don't hang up because I need your audio. But if you're watching the YouTube stream, we're leaving now. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be back next Monday at 3 p.m. PST, 6 p.m. EST, and whatever that time is wherever you are. Bye, friends.
Okay, bye.